Hello and welcome to the Anything and Everything podcast. I'm Gaz and my partner in crime and co-host is
Glenn, aka Bez.
Today we're going to talk about 25 unpleasant facts about history's best people. Over to you, mate.
Right. From the antiquity of today, people have hidden desire for fame, power and glory. We find this reflected in our admiration towards people who stand out and excel in a certain field of activity. This attention and admiration are not wrong if the individual has stood for a noble cause. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Since these icons and beloved figures are a projection of our own desire for admiration, we can tend to follow such people and idolise all their deeds. In some respects, we tend to treat them like gods, although they remain nothing more than human beings. As everyone else, even those we admire have both strengths and weaknesses. As one of the most loved and admired figures of all time, Jesus Christ used to say, "Nobody's perfect."
Okay, so start off with number 25. Alexander the Great murdered his best friend. We literally need a whole list, if not a book, to mention this legendary Greek king's accomplishments. He is mainly remembered for being undefeated in battle and possibly the most successful military commander that history has ever witnessed. He's also responsible for the spread of Greek culture worldwide and the birth of the so-called Hellenistic civilization, aspects of which were still evident in the traditions of the Byzantine Empire in the mid 15th century AD. However, there are some not so nice things to say about the greatest general of all time. Most remarkably, he killed his best friend Cletus while extremely drunk. Truth be told, Cletus kept pushing and insulting the great conqueror, but he probably didn't expect that this would be the last thing he would do during his lifetime. For the record, other than being his close friend, Cletus had also saved Alexander's life in battle.
Number 24. Chuck Berry made a few bad decisions. Chuck Berry was one of the most significant early rockers. Actually, he was the first artist to exhibit many of the traits that would come to define rock and roll. He featured his own electric guitar prominently in his music, building blocks this way for the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Beach Boys, Bob Dylan and many more. He wasn't a good of a person in his everyday life though. See, the famous musician had already been convicted of armed robbery by the time he graduated from high school. Later in life he had many more troubles with the law, including one in which he took a 14-year-old girl across state lines in 1962 and one in 1979 for tax evasion.
23. Charlie Chaplin dated underage girls. Famous for his character, the tramp, the sweet little man with a bowler hat, moustache and cane, Charlie Chaplin was an iconic figure of the silent film era. For that matter, he elevated the film industry in a way few could have ever imagined. This iconic actor, however, also had a very bad habit of chasing underage girls. When he was 30, he impregnated a 16-year-old actress, and his next relationship after that was with 15-year-old Lita Grey. Can you imagine how bad this legacy would have tarnished if Chaplin lived and worked in today's society?
That's bad. That is bad, but it's a fantastic film. Right, 22. John Lennon mocked disabled people, among other things. John Lennon's status as a legend of music is set in stone. However, the Beatles icon had a much darker side. Love or hate it, the fact is that John Lennon wasn't the saint that media portrayed him to be after his death. Archive footage revealed in 2015 from Channel 4's show It Was Alright in the 1960s showed the legendary singer mocking disabled people. John Lennon's attitude towards hitting women isn't something he shied away from either. In fact, he openly admitted it during a 1980 interview with Playboy, while insisting his earlier violence motivated his later calls for peace and love.
Wow. Okay, 21. Oprah Winfrey's overlooked hate speech. Oprah Winfrey is one of the most beloved women in American history. Her influence is literally out of this world. She has become a feminist and anti-racist symbol for American media, which loves and worships her for her efforts to bring people of all cultures, races and religions together. However, when she's discussing racism, she doesn't appear to be all that peaceful or colourblind. During an interview, Oprah pretty much said that all old white people need to die for the world to become a better place. Because, according to her, all other white people are racist.
She is quite loved though, but that's bad.
I think she's one of the richest women in the world as well.
Yeah, she is over $1 billion or something. Right, number 20. Walt Disney wasn't the best boss out there. Walt Disney is one of these immortal figures that has inspire, and will continue to inspire millions of people worldwide with his creations. He liked to express his wonders of imagination and invention. When he made Mickey Mouse, he became a hero to others. Undoubtedly, he was a very creative person. When Disney jump-started his career, it was an animation that he and the team of artists come up with that really helped with their success in history. But Mr. Disney also had another side. It seems that Walt Disney refused to hire women. He apparently replied to an aspiring female animator in a letter saying he wouldn't hire her because he didn't believe women should do that sort of job. Further, he frequently fired his animators. At one point, his animators went on strike because of pay disparities. Many of them never got the checks that they thought they deserved. He cycled through many staff members so frequently that a bunch of them came together to start a rival company.
Wow.
Which I think is Pixar. I'm not totally sure on that. I think his rival was Pixar or DreamWorks.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
Okay, 19. John F. Kennedy was pretty much a hypocrite. JFK, another figure the media has worshipped to a ridiculous extent. However, it seems like the former president was only human, with some unhealthy and bad habits. Before enacting the Cuban trade embargo in 1962, he made sure to secure for himself 1,200 Cuban cigars. Not exactly the selfless American icon that history books and modern media have taught us.
It's a lot of cigars. They're nice cigars though.
Very nice cigars.
Right, number 18. The rebellious Emmeline Pankhurst died as an unabashed imperialist. Emmeline Pankhurst was a pivotal figure in the fight for women's rights to vote. Thanks to the militant tactics of the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU, the organisation she founded in 1903 and led up to 1918. British women won their right to vote roughly a century ago. Without Parker's courageous, committed and radical leadership, none of this would have happened, not back then anyway. Partly thanks to her fear of communism, Parkhurst became surprisingly conservative in later life. An unabashed imperialist, she was prone to zealous defences of the British Empire, something that cast an unpleasant shadow over her popular image as a progressive and radical figure of the early 20th century.
Okay, number 17. Winston Churchill caused Indians to starve. Undoubtedly the most famous British Prime Minister in history, Churchill is best remembered for successfully leading Britain through World War II. He was famous for his inspiring speeches and for his refusal to give in. Even when things were going badly, what most don't know, however, is that the extra supplies he used for the British people and the military during World War II came from India. To make it simpler to understand, Churchill initially starved India to the point he sparked the devastating Bengal famine of 1943. This famine led to the loss of 3 million Indians' lives, mainly children.
Number 16. Muhammad Ali was a separatist. Ali is another modern icon that has worshipped by the Western media as an anti-racist rebel, when in reality many of his beliefs were racist and misogynistic. Other than being unfaithful and considering women inferior human beings, Muhammad Ali called fellow African American boxer Joe Frazier ugly and Uncle Tom and a gorilla. During a racist delirium he had had on live TV, Ali openly admitted that interracial relationships and marriages are pretty much a mistake and a sin against God and Mother Nature. Somehow American media still refers to Ali as an anti-racist hero. I love Ali, but reading some of that, it's...
Okay, number 15. Karl Marx didn't attend his father's funeral. Karl Marx was a famous philosopher, author, social theorist and communist. He is famous for his theories about capitalism and
communism.
Yeah, no one. Iconically, Marx was eloquent in describing the explorations of the working class, while personally failing to maintain a job for a significant period of time. In other words, Marx was a little lazy, yet he felt like representing, with his theories, not actions, the whole world's working class. Further, Karl Marx didn't attend his father's funeral. Rumours have it that he had fallen asleep and didn't hear the alarm clock.
I'd be devastated. I would if I missed my father's funeral. Right, number 14. Nelson Mandela was not a family man. Nelson Mandela led the emancipation of South Africa from a white minority rule and served as his country's first black president. He became an international emblem of dignity and forbearance. Despite being a great man on the world stage, he wasn't a good father or husband in his home life. To get a better idea, Mandela didn't even attend the birth of his daughters. To put it simply, Mandela was not a family man. Could he have been? Taking into account all his trouble with racist South African laws of his time and his imprisonment, the answer is probably not.
Okay, number 13. Napoleon was a cheater. Napoleon Bonaparte was a very intelligent general, possibly most intelligent to ever live. Like most dominant conquerors of history, Napoleon didn't like to lose, not even when he was playing games such as cards. See, the keen instinct he developed for finding an enemy's weak points and exploiting every advantage was of little use during his exile on Elba. There, he turned that instinct toward chronic cheating at card games he played with his companions. One way or another, Napoleon always found a way to win, even when he was literally losing.
Number 12. Enid Blyton was a horrible wife and mother. Way before J.K. Rowling, there was Enid Mary Blyton, an English children's writer whose books have been among the world's best sellers since the 1930s. selling more than 600 million copies.
Wow.
Blyton's books are still enormously popular and have been translated into 90 languages. Some of her most famous books include The Famous Five and The Secret Seven. The millions of children and adults who know her through her work may love her, but her own daughter wasn't even fond of her. She described her as arrogant, insecure, pretentious, and without a trace of maternal instinct. We also learn that Blyton had an affair while married to her first husband, and he filed for divorce. She wouldn't allow him visitation rights with their children after that, while her various boyfriends had everyday access to them. Coffee that.
Yeah. Number 11. Ronald Dahl, possible anti-Semitism. Whatever that is. In case his name doesn't ring any bells for you, Ronald Dahl authored the legendary children's books all of us know and love. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. During a 1983 interview, Dahl pretty much justified Hitler's hate over the Jews, suggesting that there is a trait in the Jews' character and that provoke animosity. Thank God he didn't include any such beliefs in his wonderful books.
Right, down to number 10. Isaac Newton was a massive jerk. Isaac Newton is well known for his discoveries in optics, white light composition, and mathematics calculus. However, it is a formulation of 3 laws of motion, the basic principles of modern physics, for which the whole world is grateful to him. Despite his greatness as a scientist, Isaac Newton was ruthless, calculating, cunning, and quick-tempered. To make a long story short, the man had no real friends and never got married simply because he was treated everyone like dirt.
Okay, number 9. Mother Teresa may not be as holy as portrayed. Mother Teresa may have become a saint from the Catholic Church, but the work of the most famous Catholic nun in history has received mixed reactions from prominent people, governments and organisations. Her practices and those of the Missionaries of Charity, the order which she founded, were subject to numerous controversies. These include objections to the quality of medical care they provided, suggestions that some deathbed baptisms constituted forced conversion, and alleged links to colonisation and racism. Mother Teresa has also received extensive media coverage. Some critics suggest that the Church used her image to promote Catholicism and divert the public's attentions from sexual abuse cases.
Bloody hell. Right, number 8. Mahatma Gandhi abandoned his father's deathbed to have sex. Mahatma Gandhi was the leader of India's non-violent independence movement against the British. Also, in South Africa, he advocated for the civil rights of Indians. Born in Porbandar, India, Gandhi studied law and organised boycotts against British institutions in peaceful forms of civil disobedience. What most people don't know about Gandhi, the peacemaker, is that he abandoned his own father's deathbed to have sex with his wife. His father died during his son's absence, a fact that haunted Gandhi for the rest of his life.
Number 7. Sigmund Freud was a hater. Freud's contributions to psychiatry abound, and a good argument could be made for him to be first on the list of influential thinkers. The father of psychoanalysis. Is that right?
It's psychoanalysis.
Freud championed the idea that much of mental life exists at a level that is outside of our awareness, and that these unconscious forces yield great influence on human conduct. The idea of the famous Jewish psychiatrist premeditated American psychiatry throughout much of the 20th century, and Ford is responsible for opening up psychiatric to outpatient practices. However, he despised all things American. America is a mistake, Ford stated in an interview once, and continued, a gigantic mistake it is true, but nonetheless a mistake. Sorry to all his fans, but your man was a hater and a racist.
Number 6. Johnny Cash was a fire starter. Johnny Cash, much like Elvis and the Beatles, revolutionised music. His western, folk and blues genres were seen as by Americans as an epitome of American music at the time. Not only did the music sound catchy and danceable, but it really catered to the American style of music at the time. He was also very creative in his songwriting. What we learned after his death, however, is that a drunk and totally wasted Cash accidentally ignited an infamous 1965 wildfire at Los Padres National Forest. The blaze ended up killing 49 of the park's 53 endangered Californian condor vultures.
Okay, number 5. Frank Sinatra's mafia ties. Frank Sinatra was an American singer, actor and producer. He's one of the most popular and influential musical artists ever, with many music experts describing him as the greatest American singer of the 20th century. Other than his great vocal skills and big hits, Mr. Sinatra is also notorious for his connections with the mafia and for being a very jealous husband. During one argument with his then wife and famous actress Ava Gardner, he supposedly fired a gun into a hotel room mattress to threaten her.
Number 4. Martin Luther King Jr. was a certified plagiarist, among other things. Martin Luther King Jr. is considered the face of the civil rights movement and one of the most respected men in contemporary American history. However, in his personal life, he wasn't all that great. King allegedly plagiarized parts of his doctoral thesis on systematic theology, while many of his famous speeches have been proved to be a result of his plagiarized content as well. However, the most eye-opening part of Dr. King's personal life were his numerous extramarital affairs, which led to Lyndon B. Johnson calling him a hypocritical preacher.
Well, okay, well, number 3. Albert Einstein's genius was overrated. Although the famous scientist didn't do something evil or wrong, the truth is that his genius has been ridiculously extravaganted by modern media. To begin with Albert Einstein's failures, including the first 7 proofs of E equals mc squared, and his early understandings of clock synchronization, appear to be far more than his correct theories. There's no doubt that for his time he was one of the greatest geniuses in physics. However, if he were magically transported to today's physics environment, he would only be decent. So in other words, Einstein was a big fish in a small pond, but in the big ocean of physicists that we have today, there are undoubtedly bigger fish.
Yeah, but that's in the 50s and stuff. He was around. Right, number 2. Abraham Lincoln didn't see black people as true Americans. There's no doubt that Abraham Lincoln is one of the most influential and important Americans to ever live. For all the good he did for his country, though, he definitely wasn't perfect. As history has rightfully taught us, Lincoln often expressed moral opposition to slavery in public and private. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. he stated in a now famous quote, he eventually became the president that abolished slavery. Soon after that, however, he contemplated sending freed slaves back to Africa. In other words, Lincoln may have been against slavery, but at the same time he didn't really see black people as an intrinsic part of American society.
Wow. Okay, number 1. Aristotle didn't think highly of women. The Greek philosopher Aristotle made it significant and lasting contributions to nearly every aspect of human knowledge. From logic to biology to ethics and aesthetics. In Arabic philosophy, he was known simply as the first teacher, while in the West he was considered the philosopher. According to a 7-year study conducted by MIT University Media Lab, Aristotle was found to be the most influential human being to have ever lived, even ahead of religious figures such as Jesus, Muhammad and Buddha. For all his greatness and contributions to the world, Aristotle had his flaws too. To be more specific, he saw women as subject to men, but considered them to be higher than slaves. He thought that a good woman should raise the kids, be a good housewife, and lack any kind of social authority. He suggested that the husband should exert political role over the wife. I'm not sure if modern feminists would like to be around Aristotle in his time.
I wouldn't be either. I'm not being horrible.
No.
But there you go, folks. There's some more interesting facts there for you to cipher through. And if you got anything to discuss or topics, just put it down in the comments below. Click the button, subscribe, share and like, and hit that bell noise which goes
Ding ding.
And as we say, as always,
Peace, love and be lucky. Many thanks.